Michael Crichton's 1990 novel was originally conceived as a screenplay in the 1980s and went through numerous changes before being published as a book. In the late 1970s, a bidding war began for the film rights to Crichton's then upcoming novel Congo, which would not be made into a film until 1995. With this film, Crichton hoped to avoid another bidding war and the same protracted outcome by offering the film rights at a fixed price of $1.5 million, as he was primarily concerned with ensuring that a film actually be produced. He was less interested in receiving a top offer. Crichton submitted the manuscript to his publisher in May 1990. Director Steven Spielberg learned of the novel that month while he was discussing a screenplay with Crichton that would become the television series ER. Spielberg had a lifelong fascination with dinosaurs and expressed interest, and after reading The Galleys, he committed to direct the film adaptation in what would become one of the most cinematic films ever put to the big screen in director Steven Spielberg's 1993 film, Jurassic Park.
How fast are they?
Well, we clocked the T-Rex to 32 miles an hour.
T-Rex?
Mm-hmm.
You said you've got a T-Rex?
Uh-huh.
Say again.
We have a T-Rex.
Put your head between your knees.
Dr. Grant. My dear Dr. Sattler. Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, how we doing today? Welcome back to another episode of Chills and Thrills. Connor here, along with my co-host Chris, and today we are doing a masterpiece of a film, a huge blockbuster. We're digging into the original Jurassic Park from 1993, and one of the things I always thought is from the director Steven Spielberg. You know, I loved his film Jaws. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I could probably easily say that about this film as well. I mean, both of those two films I would have to say they're in my like top 10 favorite movies of all time. And it's just I always think, how do you as a director make the definitive shark movie, like the original like summer blockbuster, and then just under 20 years down the road, like you make the definitive dinosaur film that like it has like groundbreaking special effects and takes special effects to another level. And like it's just like this is one of my favorite films, and you're probably gonna hear me say that 10 times, but I remember watching this as just a young little guy. And I mean, Jaws was the reason I became like fascinated with sharks, and Godzilla and Jurassic Park is the reason I became like fascinated and all about dinosaurs and wanting to learn more about them and stuff. So this is going to be a fun conversation. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to this movie. I know Chris he's a little more on Jurassic Park than I am, but not by much. So I know you grew up on this as a kid as well. So what did you think on the rewatch, and like what do you remember of just liking this as a kid?
Oh yeah, it's still a masterpiece. For many years, I would always list either the original Star Wars or the original Jurassic Park as my favorite movie of all time. I don't know if I would still pick it as my absolute favorite, but it's still up there. I think if I had to pick an overall best from Steven Spielberg, it'd probably be this movie. I think there are a few movies that, everything's subjective. No movie, they always say like no movie's perfect and anyone can like any movie. But I think there are a few movies that you can kind of really defend on 2 feet and say, this is pretty much a perfect movie or pretty much executed as perfectly as it could be. And I think that the original, and I don't think that's a very long list, but I think the original Jurassic Park is 100% one of those movies. Absolutely adored it as a kid. I always joked that the 5 most watched VHS tapes I had were like The Lion King, Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, Star Wars, and Empire Strikes Back. Some combination of those movies were the most watched tapes that I had as a kid, and that's true. I only ever went maybe a few years, maybe in middle school, like middle school to high school, maybe a few years where this wasn't in like a constant rotation, and I took a one of the state standardized tests when I was in high school, 9th, 10th grade, something like that. And you're in one room the whole day. You just have these very long breaks between your tests. And after we were done with all the testing, the teacher wheeled out a school standard standard def TV with a VCR and had Jurassic Park, and was like, hey, you guys can just like watch this and relax. And I hadn't seen it in maybe just a couple of years at that point, maybe 2, 3, 4 years. And even on that crappy TV, on that crappy VHS, watching that again at that time, it was like hitting all over. I was like, oh my gosh, this movie's like magic. Like, what is going on here? It's wild to have a movie that was so ingrained in your brain, and then just a couple years later, you see it again, and in the worst conditions, but it still like has the power. And so since then, I've never gone very long without watching it. It's an exceptional film.
I think ever since I seen it as a kid, I mean, I think I first seen it probably 6 or 7 years old, maybe 5 years old. Like I can't 100% remember that. This movie came out the year I was born, so clearly a very good year. And it's just it's one of those films that I don't think, I mean, at least since my teenage years, or very early teenage years, 12, 13, 14, like I think I've watched this film every year, probably multiple times a year. And I've seen it in theaters. I've seen it in the drive-in movie theater, and it's just it's one of those films that it's a little bit long. It's just, I think without credits, I think it's a little over 2 hours, like 2 hours and 2 minutes, or right around 2 hours and 1 minute, something like that. And it's one of those films that you can put on 100 times and you're going to enjoy it 100 times. The characters are great. I mean, Steven Spielberg, he's always picking these groups of characters. Like, again, I'll go back to Jaws, where you got Quint and Brody and Hooper, and then in this one you got Alan, Ian, and Ellie Sattler. There's just always good characters, and I think every character is good in this. And then you bring in John Williams, who does the score, who's done Jaws and the Star Wars and Jurassic Park, and you're like, there isn't anything about this movie that doesn't hit. Like, everything about it is fantastic the way it's done.
Absolutely. It came out a year after I was born, and so my first opportunity to see it in a theater was for the 20th anniversary re-release that was in 3D. I took my younger brother. That was the first movie I ever took him to see in a theater. So that was like calculated. I was like, I'm taking you to Jurassic Park. He was a little guy at the time, and then since then, I think they've done a couple of, like, Flashback Cinema is like a regional thing that will do, like, play like old movies on like a certain schedule, and every year or every season they pick out different stuff. And I think since the 3D re-release, I think I've seen it in Flashback Cinema or some other forms of re-release like 2 times since. So I have gotten to see it in theaters about 3 times, which is a lot more. Like, I would have been happy for one, so that was really cool. And yeah, in terms of like Spielberg and his success, you talked about Jaws and Jurassic Park. He was on a tear where when Jaws came out, it became the biggest film, the biggest hit at the box office of all time. And then when E.T. came out, it became the number 1 movie globally at the box office. And then when Jurassic Park came out, it became the number 1 movie globally at the box office. So he did it 3 times, which in the history of cinema, no director has done it 3 times to have the number 1 worldwide film. Cameron's done it twice, James Cameron, but Spielberg still holds the record, and to do it 3 times in 3 different decades is pretty impressive. And it makes me wonder if Spielberg will ever deliver something on that tier again, and kind of come in and take everybody by storm with something really special and unique. But we'll have to see.
I am glad you brought that up, because I had forgot about him doing E.T. I haven't seen that movie in so long that I forgot that he was the one who gave us that. So yeah, I mean, three
And
banger films are absolute great films by him. I mean, the guy,
yeah, and
I
I
mean,
think
most people would say he's probably a top 10 director of all time.
I think I think I'd have to put him in top 5. I mean, I don't know every film from every director forever, but I mean, it'd be hard not to put Spielberg in any top 5 list. And I think you'd have plenty of people that would debate top 3. Uh, but yeah, and that's also very interesting. It's like you could meet someone who very easily has Jaws as their favorite 70s movie, E.T. as their favorite 80s movie, and Jurassic Park as their favorite 90s movie. You know, you can meet those folks who very easily are in that realm. And the same year he delivered Jurassic Park in 93, which became the biggest financial hit of all time, he also, that same year, Schindler's List released and sort of, you know, stormed all the award shows and was a massive critical success. You know, Spielberg did it with 2 different films in the same year and was like very much on top of the world as far as that goes at that time.
I was looking something up. Did you see when you were younger? Did you see the movies, the Carnosaur movies? I believe there's like 3 of them.
Uh, I have not seen those movies, but I have to shout out to my friend Jesse. He is the world's biggest fan and biggest champion of those movies. He like loves everything those things represent, and he always has been like, oh, they need to do like a remake. They need to do like a new version of it. Yada yada. I've never actually seen them though, but I'm aware. I saw those VHS tapes on the shelves very often in Blockbuster, but never actually rented them and watched them.
Okay, when I was younger, I always thought those were a Jurassic Park like ripoff, or you know, because clearly they didn't have as high a budget, the special effects aren't as good. And when I was doing research for this first episode, I seen that the first film of Carnosaur actually came out before Jurassic Park. So I didn't know if
Yeah,
like
that's often a thing where, you know, because the industry, people within the industry know that movies are coming way down the line, and the adaptation of the Jurassic Park novel and the Jurassic Park movie, that would have been something that would have had a long preamble. And so then what happens is that the lower budget you know, film industry sort of jumps in and moves very, very quickly to make something so that they can have it out in time to line up with the promotion and release of the big movie they're sort of ripping off, if you will. And so yeah, that happens a lot. You know, that film was probably, you know, a quick make because Jurassic Park was coming.
well, I learned that it wasn't a ripoff. I do like those films.
Oh,
I
really?
doing research
Okay.
for this episode. I seen that because I was when I looked this up, it like gave me options of other dinosaur movies around that time, and I seen that and I was like, man, I haven't seen those films in a long time. So like just for fun, I'm going on a little tangent, but I went and looked them up and tried to see if I could find them on like Amazon and stuff. But I mean they're not terrible films. I mean they're definitely not your Jurassic Park. But I mean they're fun dinosaur movies and with some good attack scenes and stuff. But they're never gonna match up to this clearly.
Yeah, it's funny that Roger Corman was involved with that, and he was known for B movies. And it said that, you know, he acquired the rights to that novel in '91, and the project began filming a year later after he learned that Jurassic Park was entering production. So there you go.
Well, let me give you some quick background on Jurassic Park, and we'll get into some more conversation about it. Get to a trailer, a plot synopsis, and get to all the good stuff after this.
Yeah, let's get going.
Jurassic Park is a 1993 American science fiction action film directed by Steven Spielberg, produced by Kathleen Kennedy and Gerald R. Molen, and starring Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Richard Attenborough. It is the first installment in the Jurassic Park franchise and the first film in the original Jurassic Park trilogy, and it is based on Michael Crichton's 1990 novel of the same name, with the screenplay by Crichton and David Koepp. The film is set on the fictional island of Isla Nublar off Central America's Pacific coast near Costa Rica, where a wealthy businessman, John Hammond, played by Attenborough, and a team of genetic scientists have created a wildlife park of de-extinct dinosaurs. When industrial sabotage leads to a catastrophic shutdown of the park's power facilities and security precautions, a small group of visitors, including Hammond's grandchildren, struggle to survive and escape the new perilous island. Before Crichton's novel was published, 4 studios put in bids for its film rights. With the backing of Universal Pictures, Spielberg acquired the rights for $1.5 million before its publication in 1990, and Crichton was hired for an additional $500,000 to adapt the novel for the screen. Koepp wrote the final draft, which left out much of the novel's exposition and violence while making numerous changes to the characters. Filming took place in California and Hawaii from August to November of 1992, and post-production lasted until May of 1993. Supervised by Spielberg in Poland as he filmed Schindler's List. The dinosaurs were created with groundbreaking computer-generated imagery by Industrial Light and Magic, and with life-size animatronics dinosaurs built by Stan Winston's team. And to showcase the film's sound design, which included a mixture of various animal noises for the dinosaur sounds, Spielberg invested in the creation of DTS, a company specializing in digital surround sound formats. The film was backed by an extensive $65 million marketing campaign, which included licensing deals with over 100 companies. Jurassic Park premiered on June 9, 1993 at the Uptown Theater in Washington, D.C., and released on June 11th in the United States. It was a blockbuster hit and surpassed Spielberg's own E.T. the Extraterrestrial to become the highest-grossing film of all time until the release of Titanic in 1997. It also remains the highest-grossing film directed by Steven Spielberg to date, and the film was also a critical success with praise directed at its special effects, sound design, action sequences, John Williams' score, and Spielberg's direction. Jurassic Park won over 20 awards, including 3 Academy Awards for technical achievements in visual effects and sound design. Following its 20th anniversary re-release in 2013, Jurassic Park became the oldest film in history to surpass $1 billion in ticket sales and the 17th overall. Jurassic Park's pioneering use of computer-generated imagery is considered to have paved the way for the special effects practices of modern cinema. In 2018, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historical, and aesthetically significant. The film spawned multiple media franchise that includes 5 sequels, 2 television series, multiple video games, theme park attractions, comic books, and various styles of merchandise from lunchbox to t-shirts to sweatpants and pretty much anything else you can think of. So there is a lot of background on the original Jurassic Park.
Yeah, we could. I mean, each one of those bullet points could almost be a 5 to 10 minute conversation. But yeah, extremely exceptional film, exceptional production, and just a very, very, very important movie to film history. Nothing more that needs to be said on that. Like it's an all timer. It's an all timer for sure. The groundbreaking CGI, the success of the film, spawning a franchise, kind of defining the 90s blockbuster game, and it kind of like sets the tone for that decade, and there's just it's fantastic. We're gonna keep talking about it, but there's not enough praise to be heaped upon it.
Well, I was watching it last night with a friend. Carly and I were watching it, and she had only seen very few clips of this film. She'd never seen the entire film. So when I knew we were going to record this, I messaged her. We were talking throughout the day, and I was like, "Have you ever seen Jurassic Park?" And she was like, "I've seen a couple clips of it." And I was like, "I was just wondering because I was going to watch it tonight. I was going to see if you wanted to." And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'll watch it." She's like, "I've never seen it." And she comes over, and when the scene where the T-Rex is breaking out of the paddock, she's locked into the TV, and she looks at me and she goes, "What year was this made?" And you can just tell like her gears were grinding, like, damn, this looks awesome. This looks good.
Yeah, I remember I showed my cousin somewhere in that 2011 to 2015 kind of a realm. I showed my younger cousins who didn't know it and hadn't seen it, and something like that, and so there's not very many opportunities that you get to show someone who had. I mean, maybe now that we're more generations removed, but for a while there, I mean, everyone saw this movie, everyone knew this movie, and everyone not only like knew it, they knew it like the back of their hand, at least as far as my experience goes, like so. Now we're kind of in that realm where it's a bit of this sort of like classic that's being shown to younger people by older people, and it's it's interesting.
Yeah, it's hard for me to ask people like, have you seen? Oh, I haven't seen Jurassic Park. I haven't seen.
That would be like asking someone in the last 10 years, like, have you seen the Avengers, or something like that. It's like everybody has seen at least some of those Marvel movies. Everyone knows them. It's kind of that thing.
Well, and then I've heard some people say like, I've seen Jurassic World, but I haven't seen Jurassic Park, and it's like, well, how
Which
do you?
is so interesting. Yeah, I know that's like the modern thing. Like anytime you have a sequel that's like 20 plus years after the original, and so there's like that gap, you're always going to bring in that new wave of people that, they're young seeing that one, and they just don't have the context or the reference for the original. So it's always going to happen, but it's always shocking to hear. It's like, how does someone, even like if you've got a parent taking you as a child, how do they not sit you down and show you the first one before you go see the other one? I don't know. That's beyond me.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they thought it was like a strict remake, or maybe they weren't in the loop. I'm not sure.
Perhaps. And a lot of times those legacy sequels, like Jurassic World, the Halloween 2018, even to an extent the Thing prequel in 2011, the Star Wars, The Force Awakens, they do this thing where it's like they're sequels or prequels in one instance, but they're sort of marketed and promoted as if they're like this kind of totally new thing for all intents and purposes of the promotion, because it's a marketing thing designed to make new fans and non-fans feel like they can just come in at that one, while all of the established fans know it's a continuation and it brings them in too. It's this sort of, refresh, restart, it's not really a reboot, but it's just sort of like this. It's like this pseudo reboot, these sort of long distance sequels, and it's it's very much a marketing thing. You give it a unique title, or in the case of Halloween and The Thing, the exact same title. So in terms of, and they did it with Scream once too, with one of the Scream sequels. It's like, oh, you don't put a number on it, don't put a subtitle on it, or in Jurassic Park, you just change it to Jurassic World. So that way, anyone new who's unfamiliar would be like, oh, that looks cool, I'll go see that, and they don't feel pressure to be familiar with the series. But then all of the other fans will be like, oh no, it's number 5 or it's number 4, or whatever. So it's a have your cake and eat it too thing that's like very much a marketing department thing, I think.
I can see where you're going with that. I wouldn't disagree, but yeah, when it comes to like the sequels with the same name and stuff like that, it is
Which
a little
I
different than
hate.
coming into a film.
I can't stand the sequels with the exact same name. I freaking hate that. I don't know.
Well, we only have 3 movies titled Halloween, so in the same franchise.
Gosh, and I mean, what we've got 3. We got 2 Halloween 2s.
Yeah.
Geez.
All right, well, how about we get into a trailer for the film, get a plot synopsis read off, and we'll dig into some numbers and fun facts, and then we'll come back and talk about our favorite characters and whatnot of the film.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Since the beginning of time, man has searched the earth for evidence of its past. But while some have looked for clues to the mystery, one man has found the way to bring the mystery back to life.
I own an island off the coast of Costa Rica, and I've spent the last 5 years setting up a kind of biological preserve.
Here, on this private island, science has defied evolution.
Where do you get 100 million year old dinosaur blood?
Genetics has mastered creation.
We've made living biological attractions so astounding that they'll capture the imagination of the entire planet.
And extinction is a thing of the past.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
What they got in there, King Kong?
None of these attractions are ready yet, of course, but the park will open with the basic tour you're about to take.
Hey, look at this!
You see something?
Dinosaurs and man. 2 species separated by 65 million years of evolution have just been suddenly thrown back into the mix together.
Can I touch it?
Sure. How can we possibly have the slightest idea
You feel that?
what to expect.
Fences are failing all over the park.
Yeah, that's nice.
Phones are out too.
Gotta go.
Universal Pictures presents
I can't get Jurassic Park back online.
an adventure 65 million years in the making.
Oh no.
This is just a delay. That's all it is. All major theme parks had delays. When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked.
But John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
You sure we're safe?
Yes. Unless they figured out how to open doors.
Jurassic Park.
Industrialist John Hammond has created Jurassic Park, a theme park of de-extincted dinosaurs on the tropical island of Isla Nublar, off of the coast of Costa Rica. After a velociraptor kills a dinosaur handler, the park's investors, represented by lawyer Donald Gennaro, demand a safety certification, or else they'll pull their funding. Gennaro invites chaotician Ian Malcolm, and Hammond invites paleontologist Alan Grant and paleobotanist Ellie Sattler. Upon arrival, the group is shocked to see living Brachiosaurus and Parasaurolophus. At the park's visitor center, the group learns that the cloning was accomplished by extracting dinosaur DNA from prehistoric mosquitoes preserved in amber. DNA from frogs, among other animals, was used to fill in gaps in the dinosaur's genome. To prevent breeding, the dinosaurs were made female by direct chromosome manipulation. The group witnesses the hatching of a baby velociraptor and visits the raptor enclosure. During lunch, the group debates the ethics of cloning and the park's creation. Malcolm warns of the implications of genetic engineering, while Grant and Sattler express uncertainty over the ability of humans and dinosaurs to coexist. Hammond's grandchildren, Lex and Tim, join the others for a park tour while Hammond oversees them from the control room. Most of the dinosaurs fail to appear, and the group encounters a sick Triceratops. The tour is cut short as a tropical storm approaches. The park employees leave for the mainland on a boat while the visitors return to their railed electric tour vehicles. Except Sattler, who stays behind with the park's veterinarian, Dr. Harding, to study the sick Triceratops. Jurassic Park's disgruntled lead computer programmer, Dennis Nedry, was previously bribed by Louis Dodson, a man working for Hammond's corporate rival, to steal frozen dinosaur embryos. He deactivates the park's security system to access the embryo storage room and stores them inside a container disguised as a Barbasol shaving cream can. Nedry's sabotage cuts power to the tour vehicles, stranding them as they near the park's Tyrannosaurus Rex paddock. Most of the park's electric fences have also been deactivated, allowing the Tyrannosaurus to escape and attack the group. After the T-Rex overturns a tour vehicle, it injures Malcolm and devours Gennaro, while Grant, Lex, and Tim escape. On his way to deliver the embryos to the island's docks, Nedry gets lost in the rain, crashes his Jeep Wrangler, and is killed by a venom-spitting Dilophosaurus. Sattler helps the game warden Robert Muldoon search for survivors. They find Malcolm just before the Tyrannosaurus returns and chases them away. Grant, Tim, and Lex take shelter in a treetop and encounter a Brachiosaurus herd. They discover the broken shells of dinosaur eggs the following morning. Grant concludes the dinosaurs are breeding, which is possible because of amphibian DNA. Animals like West African frogs can change their sex in a single-sex environment, enabling the dinosaurs to breed, proving Malcolm's earlier statement that life finds a way. The three later encounter a Gallimimus stampede being hunted by the Tyrannosaurus. Unable to decipher Nedry's code to reactivate the security system, Hammond and Chief Engineer Ray Arnold decide to reboot the park's systems. The group shuts down the park's power grid and retreats to an emergency bunker while Arnold heads to a maintenance shed to complete the rebooting process. When Arnold fails to return, Sattler and Muldoon head over, discovering the shutdown has released the Velociraptors. Muldoon distracts two of them while Sattler turns the power back on before being attacked by a third and discovering Arnold's severed arm. While she escapes, Muldoon is caught off guard and killed by a Velociraptor. Grant, Tim, and Lex reach the visitor center. Grant heads out to look for Sattler, leaving Tim and Lex inside. The Raptors appear and pursue Tim and Lex throughout a kitchen, but they escape, locking one in a freezer before joining Grant and Sattler. The group reaches the control room, and Lex restores the park's systems, allowing them to contact Hammond, who calls for help. As they try to leave, they are cornered by the two remaining Raptors, but the Tyrannosaurus appears and kills them while the group flees. Hammond arrives in a Jeep with Malcolm, and they board a helicopter to leave the island. Grant and Hammond agree not to endorse the park.
Very well done yet again, sir.
Ba-na-na-na-na.
Yep, sing us the outro music. We're done.
Yeah, I know, right?
Not as long as I thought that would be, as I said. I figured there would be some explanation, some long run-on sentences or something in that one.
Well, and you mentioned earlier that the movie's a little long, and in my opinion, I've always thought this movie was, like, perfect. Like, yeah, 2 hours is 2 hours, but I've always thought this movie is, like, I wish that many modern-day blockbusters that were, like, 220, 225, 215 would take more of a page from this franchise's book and go more for that, like, if you're kind of a blockbuster, keep it at like a 2-hour adventure, but that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's long because this film, it rolls through at a very good pace. It keeps you entertained very well. The characters are entertaining. And then you get I'll get into some dinosaur action and stuff here in a little bit, but I mean, like what you get of the dinosaurs, I mean, it's spaced out enough to keep you like on the edge of your seat. I mean, even if you haven't seen this for a couple years, you put it back in and you just sit there and you're amazed that this was made a little over 30 years ago.
Yeah, it has excellent structure and great pacing. Some people are like, well, what does pacing even mean? It's like, oh, it means a movie that never feels like it's slowing down, never feels like it's dying out of energy. It keeps you intrigued. And as we go into the discussion a little more deeper, there's just a few, there'll be a few things that I just want to bring up and highlight because it's just a very, very well put together movie.
Well, why don't we go ahead and continue on so we can get to those. I'll give you some numbers here for you on Jurassic Park.
Sure thing. Let's do it.
So Jurassic Park had a budget of $63 million in 1993, and it went on to gross just over $914 million worldwide in its original theatrical run. And after its re-release, it ended up having a total box office of $1.058 billion.
Yes, and so adjusted for inflation, that original $63 million budget in 93 would be about a $135 million budget in 2025, give or take, which is actually still quite on the cheap end for blockbuster budgets. And I think it's just because the film industry was a bit more dialed in back then, and things were handled in a bit more of a concise way. And nowadays, there's just a lot of movies that just film a bunch of material and then they get reworked and worked over and just almost completely built in post-production with visual effects and editing and reshoots and reworkings. And there's just so much of that kind of movies just being in flux that creates a lot of chaos and creates a lot of like unnecessary expenditures. Whereas, things were a bit more dialed in back then, especially someone like Spielberg was always very dialed in. And, there's a great anecdote about the movie that when he was finishing it, there's about 63 to 65, depending on your source, shots with CGI in the movie. And at one point, Steven Spielberg he reached an edit lock on the movie with no CGI in the film. He had basically a final cut on the movie, and he said no more editorial tweaks are being made. This is what the movie is, and now they can take the film and go do the CGI. So they were only ever doing CGI for the shots that were 100% in the movie. There's no 10-minute CGI sequences that were half done and cut. There's no last-minute changes of, oh, this is going to be, a velociraptor in this shot instead of a triceratops or something wild like that. It was very dialed in, very honed in, very carefully handled. So that's why the budget's probably much more reasonable. That box office, the original 914 million would be the equivalent of about 2.29 billion today. In 2013, it made another it made another 144 million, which that would be about another 200 million today if it were re-released. So imagine any movie re-releasing today and making 200 million. So bringing the total, you adjust that 93 number for inflation to get the 2.29. You adjust that 144 for inflation, that's about 198. And so the grand adjusted for inflation box office number for now in 2025 would be about 2.488 billion. So give or take about $2.5 billion, which would basically put it as what the number 2 movie all time behind the original Avatar. So I mean, and that would be adjusting for inflation in terms of, I know there's other movies that adjust for inflation and are higher than that, but just to put this one on the current chart relative to everything else that's bigger than Avatar 2, or no, it would be number 3 because there's Avatar in game. This would be number 3, but still, that's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, even coming off of what you said, the $63 million budget today would be 135 million, and it by today's standards, it would have grossed 2.2 billion. If you put that in perspective, okay, like for something that me and you like can look at, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire's budget was $135 million, or right around there, and that grossed a little over 550 million. So I
Yeah, I
mean,
think it was like 570.
Yeah, this did over 4 times that on the same amount of budget. Like that
Yeah.
to kind of put it in perspective a little bit.
Yeah, at the time it was the first film to ever gross 900 million in actual dollars at the global box office, and it was the number one hit of all time.
Yeah,
and it held that for a few years. I think there was a point in time where like the top 3 films globally were like Jurassic Park, The Lion King, and Independence Day. Like there was a window of time where it was like Jurassic Park was number 1, Independence Day was number 2, and The Lion King was number 3. It's like that's a wild world to think about because most modern charts that you look at, they didn't exist back then. No one had, no one was going on the internet looking at the box office charts back then. But that would have been a heck of a top 10 box office hit list to look at.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll continue with some quick numbers here for you. This film has a 8.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb. A very low rating on Metacritic, surprisingly. It's only rated a 68% on Metacritic.
That's just
blasphemy.
Mm-hmm.
These are a little more like our numbers here. 92% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and 90% of Google users liked this film.
That's the truth.
And then I kind of got 2 for this one for you here. There are 5 human deaths in this film, averaging to 1 death about every 24 and a half minutes. But if people are counting the deaths total, there's 10, including like the Gallimimus attacked by the T-Rex, the 2 raptors killed by the T-Rex, and
we
things
can count.
like that.
We can count those. Dino on dino murder, still murder. Sure.
And that is all I have for you in the numbers department. So 5 human deaths, 10 deaths total.
Yeah, this is anecdotal. I'm just going purely off my memory, but I feel like this movie, it kills more prominent human characters than a lot of the sequels do. Dennis Nedry was a bit of a slimeball who was probably going to get his comeuppance, but characters like Arnold and Muldoon that are sort of, they're not exactly main characters, but they're certainly secondary characters, and I feel like a lot of the sequels don't have characters that feel that high priority getting killed off. And I mean, Gennaro even. I mean, maybe you might have seen that Gennaro was cannon fodder from the start too, but I mean, I just feel like the other films didn't really do a lot of, and I mean, maybe I'll be proven wrong, there'll be some obvious stuff. But in terms of like these characters, like some of these characters make it quite a ways into the movie, And so in terms of characters that like last into the movie and feel kind of prominent, I feel like this one was the most kind of vicious in terms of doing that, of like picking off fairly prominent characters that didn't feel like it was obvious they were going to die. But I mean, we'll examine that a little further as we go along. But I think that might be a quality that this film has that the sequels don't have as much.
Well, even to go off what you said for just a second, like we say like Muldoon and stuff, and like Sam Jackson's character, like those are like second rate characters in the film. Like, but even Nedry, like we start off the film after like the opening attacks, like the cold open with him, and like he's the reason that everything is happening in the park. So it almost like tries to like make him one of our main characters, but he's not like part of our main character group. Like everything's happening because of him.
He's kind of the human antagonist, if you will, the closest thing to that, the saboteur.
Yeah, last night, when
Newman.
Last night when we were watching it, she's just the friend I was watching it with. She's like, he's a slime ball. I really hope he gets his.
Yeah.
All right, let me move on to some fun facts for you here. I have a bunch of them. I'm trying to dig deep here on the first Jurassic Park. So my first one is Jurassic Park currently ranks as the 37th highest grossing film of all time in the US and Canada, not adjusted for inflation, and the 44th highest grossing film of all time worldwide.
Yeah, it's been knocked down, unfortunately, but that's okay. We'll have to live with that. Time moves on. Inflation takes us all.
And it's still, I mean, it's still 32 years later. I mean, the 37th and 44th all time. You think there's billions of movies made.
Yeah, to still be in the top 50 is very impressive.
Yeah. Universal Pictures paid Michael Crichton $2 million for the rights to his novel before it was even published.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it was something that one of the documentaries I watched, Steven Spielberg, I guess, knew Michael Crichton or had a conversation with him, and Crichton kind of meant like the topic came up of what Crichton was working on, and he kind of was like, oh, like dinosaurs and like genetic engineering and things like that, and that caught Steven Spielberg's interest. And so I believe it was one of those things where it's like Universal did it, but like it was sort of geared by or steered by via Spielberg. Like they acquired it for Spielberg before the novel was even done, because Spielberg was already kind of pre-gamed and interested in it.
I mean, there's definitely a lot. I mean, from what I read up, there's definitely a lot of, as soon as Spielberg heard about the novel and read it, and so I mean, he was on board from the get.
Yeah, and I mean, you can just feel the passion in it,
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes along with my next fun fact, but I haven't read the novel. I really want to. It is on my list, and I'm kind of working my way through my bookshelf that I have at home here. But the Mr. DNA cartoon was Steven Spielberg's way of condensing much of the novel's exposition into just a few minutes of the film.
Yeah, and it's it's a testament to the great filmmaking of the movie. That I always say things like when movies are economic, and so like it's always great when a film can kind of be palatable for adults and for kids without feeling like it's parenting to children or leaving children out of it. And the Mr. DNA cartoon, it's perfect because if you had a theme park with some sort of attraction to explain it, you would have something like that to make kid attendees understand. And then within the context of the film, it's a very efficient economic dump. It's very engaging visually and fun and dynamic, but it also has a context within the plot that makes perfect sense. And it's saved for the right moment in the movie, as in we don't get explained what works and then get shown that cartoon. It's not redundant information. So it kind of is like a perfect execution of an exposition dump to make kids understand, adults understand. No one feels dumb. No one feels like they're being pandered to, and no one feels like they're just listening to a bunch of people babble. It's visually engaging and still moving the story along while explaining the story. And it's just it's a perfect example of one of these kinds of scenes.
Yeah, I'm over 30 years old, and I still find that film fun, the last time I watched it.
And I have to, even dinosaurs. That was always stuck in my head my entire life. I just had to say that.
I always liked, hello, John. Hello, John.
Yeah.
Speaking of John, here you go. John Williams scored the movie at the end of February 1993 and recorded it a month later. He said he felt he needed to write pieces that would convey a sense of awe and fascination, given it dealt with the overwhelming happiness and excitement that would emerge from seeing live dinosaurs.
Yeah, I think I mean, outside of Star Wars, I think it's one of his best film scores. I mean, I know I've got a Jaws fan in the building here, but I mean, for me, I mean, does John Williams, has he ever written anything that didn't inspire awe and fascination and all of those great things? I mean, he knocks it out of the park, no pun intended, every time. And Jurassic Park is one of his finest film scores, and it's just infinitely memorable.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know too much of what he's done, but everything I know that he has done, he's done masterful work on, and including this and of course Jaws. Oh, my next one for you here is the crew had to have safety meetings about the animatronic Tyrannosaurus Rex. It weighed 12,000 pounds and was extremely powerful, and they used flashing lights to announce when it was about to come on to alert the crew because if you stood next to it and the head went by at speed, it felt like a bus going by.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the kind of child of the technology used to on the Alien Queen and Aliens. It's very much that sort of next evolution of that kind of giant animatronic. And they the they base everything about those things on the weight of the structure, and so the movements and everything are all designed based on the weight of the mechanism and the latex and prosthetic and animatronic puppet pieces attached to it. And I guess in the rain they didn't calculate for the fact that the material the material of the T-Rex's skin would soak up some of the rain, and that would change the weight, and so then that would make the mechanism kind of have miscalculations, and so the T-Rex animatronic would start sort of jittering and being unpredictable in its movements, and they would have to stop filming and try and dry it off and then resume filming so that it would resume like the regular motion and controls again.
Yeah, they didn't have, he didn't have as many problems as his film Jaws, but they with the animatronics they still had some difficulties in this film, but I mean, it all shows up on screen, and the work was clearly well worth it.
Yeah, and I mean, wonderful practical effects, creature design, animatronics, puppetry work by Stan Winston, the late great Stan Winston, responsible for many of film's iconic creatures and animatronic and practical makeup effects work and things like that. And enough can't be said about how well they kind of balance the animatronics with the CGI in this film and others.
Yeah, when Jurassic World came out, and I actually my dad had, he likes the Jurassic Park films. He had seen the original three, so when that fourth film came out, after it came out on Blu-ray, I took it over there and I was like, "Hey, I know you haven't seen this. Let's sit down, order it, or I'll order a pizza, watch it." And so when the scene came on at the end where the Tyrannosaurus fights the Indominus, what the very first thing my dad said is, the T-Rex in '93 just looks better. It just made me laugh because I was like, yeah, computer generated compared to an animatronic. So I mean, I
Yeah.
always choose to go the animatronic route if I could,
Yeah, I love Jurassic World, but a criticism is that, and I know there might have been some schedule concerns that might have impacted it, but whatever. A little too light on the animatronics and a little too fully CGI on everything. That's one of the pitfalls of modern filmmaking. And a film like Jurassic Park kind of showcases that it's not just the quality of the render of the CGI, it's how you're lighting it. And you know, my buddy loves the term specular highlights, which is sort of for how light is catching and displaying on a CGI render, and it's lighting and it's the movement. Famously, former stop motion animators were used in a unique way to help animate the dinosaurs in this film. They developed a special sort of mechanical rod puppet that was multi-point rod puppet that was dialed into a computer so that the stop motion animators could do the movements on those puppets, and it would transfer into the computer the movement instead of a keyboard junkie would type it and click their mouse and do that to make the movements happen. They had a literal puppet that was mechanical that they could manipulate, and then those movements would transfer into the computer and apply to the CGI model. So you had people who had spent years in stop motion animation understanding how to photograph movement, how to move creatures, how to move characters in stop motion frame by frame in a way that looked dynamic and worked and felt realistic. And those talents were being applied to the CGI models in this film. And, the speed and the pace and just the way that it's done was done in a very realistic fashion that modern films often get very, for lack of a better term, animated and cartoony with the CGI. The camera movements get quick, the character movement gets fast and it feels a little disproportionate or unrealistic, and the lighting gets a little off, and it all just feels a little too glisteny, a little too, again, cartoony in how it's done, and it doesn't feel grounded in reality in the way that we see an elephant and how an elephant moves. And like you can kind of look at the T-Rex and it feels sort of proportionally realistic. It doesn't feel like that T-Rex is all of a sudden moving way too fast or way too dynamically for a creature of that size. And so there is something very right about this film that I think some of the later sequels and just modern movies in general don't get right.
Absolutely, very well said. Very well said. I'll continue on with our fun facts and I know you're a huge Jurassic Park fan. So do you know how they made the water vibrate for the when the T-Rex for his footsteps? Or
For the cup, I believe so. They put a guitar string underneath the dashboard of where the cup was at and plucked it to get the kind of perfect concentric circles.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
A man on the floor plucked the strings to
Yeah,
achieve
I'm
the
not sure
effect.
how they did that. Do you know how they did the one in the footprint? Do you know how they did that one? Because I'm not sure if they specifically mentioned how they got that to happen.
I don't think
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think I have
I would love
anything
to.
on that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that story because it's like it does kind of the same thing, but it's like, well, how did they? Maybe that was an easier thing to do, so there's no great story behind it. I don't know, but yes, I love the trimmer and the cup of water. It's a great it's a great scene. Do you feel that? It's an impact tremor. I'm
Maybe
fairly alarmed here.
maybe it's the power trying to come back on.
Yeah. Famous last words.
Yeah. All right, my next one for you here. I figured you would know that one. I have an explanation about it, but I wanted to ask the Jurassic Park buff if he knew.
Oh, I've got my fair share of limitless random knowledge about Jurassic Park for sure.
Well, my next one for you here is the Triceratops dung at around 50 or so minutes into the film didn't smell at all. It was actually made of clay, mud, and straw, and it was drizzled in honey and papayas so flies would swarm near it during shooting.
Wow. And I hear they nicknamed that huge pile of shit Jaws for the Revenge. That's a joke. That's a joke. Every time
Oh,
I see like a really, really bad movie or something, I always, and it's a famous internet meme too. Everyone will post the Ian Malcolm gif of him just being like, "That is one big pile of shit."
that's one of those lines that gives me a laugh every time, every single time. The kitchen scene was Ariana Richards' favorite scene. It was filmed in 2 weeks with raptors there most of the time and a man in a suit some of the time. Anyone in a raptor suit could only do it for up to 15 minutes because they were bent over in a downhill skiing position, which is a very physical position, and the raptor's clicking its toenail was done with a puppeteer walking on raptor legs.
Yeah, I think there's only one or two kind of wide shots in the movie that have the sort of raptor suits on screen. The close-ups of the heads and feet are puppets. All of the mid-range shots are pretty much CGI. I think it's like a wide shot of them like entering into the kitchen and things like that where it's actually the suits.
Well, and that was the only like last night watching it. That was the only thing that I really was like, okay, that aged a little bit. It still looks great, but doesn't somewhat look up to
Yeah,
par with the Raptors a little bit here and there.
I think the CGI, and I mean, and they're in the harshest lighting environment. You know, when you have the T-Rex in the darkness, in the rain, it's kind of and intercut a lot with the animatronic. It kind of it masks a lot and helps build it into the environment more. And I would say, you know, like the Brachiosaurus also, like it's still a great moment, but when you look at the textures of it and the movement of it, it's like, yeah, it might have taken 30 years, but you know, the CGI, which remained timeless and flawless for a solid 20 years, I think it is finally starting to show its age. It is finally, you know, starting to kind of see like, yeah, it's kind of you know, there were limits of 1993. These things were all being rendered at basically just HD. You know, you know, there's no 2K CGI here. There's no 4K CGI here. You know, so there. So even in terms of resolution of the rendering, like everything was just very limited. So it's kind of a testament to the film that they still look as good as they do.
Yeah, it's not something I'm gonna complain about. It was just a small thing I noticed last night. That was about the only thing in the CGI was when the Raptors were in the kitchen. It looked a little bit dated, but I mean I still love
Yeah,
the way it looks. I mean I can't
yeah.
knock it for being 30 years old and aging a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're watching a 4K disc of a movie like Jurassic Park, it's like, yeah, it's 4K. They went back to the camera negative and scanned it, but those shots to put the CGI in, those shots had to be scanned into the computer, and then the CGI is put in them, and then they're put back onto film. But in that process, you scan a 35 millimeter shot into a computer at basically 1K HD resolution, put in an HD model, and then put it back onto film. You're losing something in that transfer. You know, an HD scan of a 35 millimeter image is losing a lot. That's why if you really look at the surrounding elements of the CGI in those shots, the live action elements, they kind of have a little bit of a flat look to them, a little bit of like loss of detail compared to the rest of the movie, where all of that footage was always on film and was never digitally scanned and never lost any of that detail information. And so it's just, you know, you can't overcome those things. They would have to literally go back in, go back to the original footage, rescan it, do all new CGI at 4K, and then re-put it. And that would be changing the movie. And nobody really wants that. And, you know, there are some, you know, the big giveaways, I think, are more so like if you ever look at the feet, when the feet of the CGI Raptors are touching the table, or the feet of the CGI T-Rex are meeting the ground. If you look at those, that's kind of the moments where it feels like it's not as expertly integrated as modern movies are able to do, but very, you know, very minor flaws in the CGI.
I don't know if you listeners know this, but I have a very technically smart co-host.
I'm sorry, I can't help it. I can't help it.
I love it. I love hearing you ramble about what they need to do to bring you know, regular HD up to 4K, and
Yeah,
I
they'd
love
have
it.
to redo all of the CGI, and then that would be changing it, and then nobody would like that. You know, if we learned anything from George Lucas Star Wars movies, people do not want you going in and redoing their memories. You know, I suppose if we always had the original and Spielberg said like, hey, we're going to upgrade all 63 CGI shots with brand new, you know, 4K versions, like I would watch it, I would buy it, I would love it, but I know a lot of people would be very upset about that.
They would probably update the dinosaurs to have feathers and
Oh
hair.
gosh, please no. That's where I would like no. If you just want to upres it, by all means upres it. Don't change a frame of it in terms of anything else, though. Like, you know, that's where I would start to get angry. Let's just make them all dragons, because we know dinosaurs were actually all dragons anyway, right? You know, they walk, you know, all that stuff.
Well, they all
I love
turned,
I love watching those videos going down those rabbit
they all
holes.
turned into birds, so we can just make them birds. You know.
Yeah, give them all wings. Yeah, why not?
All right, this is the one I kind of debated putting this into numbers a little bit, but I left it in our fun facts. So, despite being called Jurassic Park, the dinosaurs only have around 15 minutes of screen time. 9 minutes are Stan Winston's animatronics, and 6 minutes of it is industrial light and magic CGI. And that means only around 11% of the film is dedicated to dinosaur scenes.
Yeah, but in a movie like this, which is very much structured, if you really analyze it, it's structured a lot more like a horror movie, like a sort of creature feature thrills kind of a movie, just played in a way that can work for an all ages audience. So, when it's like you're scared of the raptors and the raptors are going to jump out and kill somebody, or the T-Rex is going to, walk up and chomp somebody, it's the Dilophosaurus is played like a total kind of spooks in the closet kind of a scene. When it's played as sort of all audience horror, you're not really having an expectation of seeing a lot of screen time for the dinosaurs. It certainly doesn't feel like there's a lack of any screen time, because each character gets its own at least one standout sequence and highlight sequence. You know, the animatronics obviously are where they are. You get the scene that's all about the Brachiosaurus and its glory, and then you get the scene that's really up close and personal with the Triceratops. You get that amazing T-Rex sequence. You get that scary Dilophosaurus scene. You get that amazing kitchen sequence with the raptors. You sort of have that standout sequence where you're squeezing the lemon completely. They're not playing the game of like, oh, here's a few seconds of the T-Rex, and then 20 minutes from now, you're going to see a few more seconds, and then 20 minutes from now, you're going to get 2 minutes. It's like, no, when it's T-Rex time, it's T-Rex time. When it's raptor time, it's raptor time, and you indulge in it. So you don't feel like you're ever being pulled away or hidden or anything outside of a little bit of the first act, which is how these movies are designed. But they do a great job of always slowly trickling in the dinosaurs. You get the tease at the beginning with the raptor, but you don't see it. The sort of cold open. You get the bones, and you're talking about the dangers of the raptor. You're seeing the cartoon, and then they just dribble it out to you, and I don't ever feel like they're holding any of it back.
No, I think this is great, and this next fun fact kind of goes off what we were just saying. How we just get glimpses here and there until it's that dinosaur's time to shine. So, except for some very brief glimpses in the opening scene, the adult velociraptors, often cited as the most memorable dinosaurs in the movie, don't make a full on-screen appearance until just over an hour and 44 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, but the key thing there is that it's not a movie called Velociraptor and then you're waiting an hour and a half to see the Velociraptor. It's called Jurassic Park, and it's about all the dinosaurs in the park itself, and they're always trickling in a dinosaur somewhere. So it's not the same as some other movies, which might have a title character, and then they make you wait an hour to see that monster, and then they make you wait another half an hour to see that monster again. So not pointing out any fingers, Godzilla 2014, but whatever.
Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that kind of thing. And again, not everyone does it as well as the master. Spielberg knows how to structure a blockbuster and how to put these things out in proper doses and pace it out right. That's all.
Yeah, so here I know we talked about the footprint of the T-Rex, but I did have a couple fun facts for the different sounds for this film. So my first one is the sound of the T-Rex's footsteps were created by cut sequoias crashing to the ground. So I don't know how they made the actual footprint itself, but there's how they made the sound.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You always just assume like, oh, the sound is done some, however they make sounds. But, a lot of it, especially in the earlier days with less synthetic tools, it's like, nah, most of it's some recording of something that might be slowed down or reverbed or pitched up or pitched down. And so that's a fun one, the falling of sequoias. That's great.
Well, then my next one is a rattlesnake made the noise of the Dilophosaurus neck rattle because it was scary to listen to. And then the cute Dilophosaurus sound was made by the hopping chirps of a swan.
Oh, wow. What a great contrast for the two different sounds and the two different sides of the Dilophosaurus.
Yeah, I mean, we get some good dinosaur action in here, man, and we get a good variety of dinosaurs for this first film.
Yeah, for sure. Different sizes, different dynamics. I love the little bit with the Dilophosaurus when it's if you don't pay attention, you won't notice it, but they'll the little tour guide voice, makes a comment at one point like, we now know that Dilophosaurus spits out a venom or whatever. It's like the story behind that is probably like they made this thing having no idea about that, and then it happened, and they're like, "Oh, holy crap!" Someone got blasted in the face by that thing's, venom excretion, and it's like, "Oh my gosh," like that's a fascinating thing to, it's one of those little details. Lots of tiny bits of like dialogue and key details that can that fly under the radar a bit if you're just like taking the movie in. It's great. It's a rich movie.
It's hard not to just take the movie in if you haven't seen it for a while, or if it is your first time seeing it. So you will miss quite a bit.
Yeah, Spielberg knows how to shoot these things. He knows how to shoot these things. He knows how to move the camera. He's got great instincts.
Absolutely. I have 4 more for you here. I know we've been going through them for a while, but this one relates to you and I big time, as we've done these franchises already. Classic giant monster films like the 1933 King Kong or the 1954 Godzilla were major influences on Steven Spielberg, and the main reason why he wanted to direct this. Spielberg paid homage to Kong in the film, with Dr. Ian Malcolm uttering, "What do they got in there, King Kong?" Also, after
Yeah.
seeing the Kong puppet on the Universal Studios tour, Spielberg asked the designer to apply the same principles to the movie's dinosaurs. For example, the smoothness, the muscle tone, etc. And in the making of the Jurassic Park book, Spielberg described how King of the Monsters version of Godzilla was an influence, stating, "Godzilla, of course, was the most masterful of all the dinosaur movies because it made you believe it was really happening."
That's high praise from an exceptional filmmaker. Would have loved to somehow have a Godzilla line of dialogue in the movie in the way that Kong does. That's just me being petty. I would have loved to get a Godzilla
Being
reference in the
greedy.
movie itself. Yeah, exactly. But what do you got in there? King Kong is a great line, and for our generation, that's got to be one of the early examples of a very, very, very popular movie making a reference to some other very popular movie. I feel like in older movies, kind of like meta movie to movie references weren't maybe as common, or maybe but it's fun to see that in a movie like this. That's a great line of dialogue, and it's nice that Spielberg knows the greats of the genre. He's a student of the game just as much as he's a master of the game, and so. I know initially he kind of had a hope or intention that all of the dinosaurs would have fully animatronic puppets, and then he realized, like for example, he was trying to find out how you could do a full size Brachiosaurus puppet, but that was just completely unfeasible. And then they were initially going to use stop motion animation, the most advanced version of the stop motion animation that they could make at the time, called Go Motion, which was attempts to make stop motion animation have some of the image blur that you get from movement that stop motion animation usually doesn't have. The pitfall of stop motion is that every time it's moved and photographed for frame by frame by frame, each frame is in focus. So then when you play it at 24 frames a second, it doesn't have a natural blur to the movement the way it would like if you waved your hand across the screen at 24 frames a second. So they were trying to combat that with stop motion and make it not look jittery by having every frame in motion. And they were trying to incorporate blur into the stop motion. If you want an example of something like that kind of being done, if you watch the Ed 209 and RoboCop, you can see how they're kind of like trying to give it a visual image blur, even though it's a stop motion animation model. And they were trying to do like an advanced version of that for this movie. Spielberg wasn't very happy with the execution of that. It wasn't really convincing for him, even though it was top of the line at the time. And then eventually, he saw a CGI test of skeletons, like CGI skeletons running across an image, and it looked smooth, it looked convincing. And eventually they went with CGI for the other method to complement the animatronics.
Are you sure you didn't go to film school or something? Like,
I just watched my fair share of documentaries.
Man, I watch a lot, but I feel like your knowledge exceeds me. And around my area and my friend group, man, I blow my friends away in what I know about behind the scenes and stuff. And you're kind of making me look like what I make them look like right now.
Oh, I can't. I mean, I never, I don't get many opportunities to kind of indulge like this, so it's fun.
Absolutely, let it fly. So here's a part of the fun facts that in a lot of our recent episodes we got the what if for characters of who could have played who. So my first one here for you, I believe we talked about this on a previous episode, was Jim Carrey was considered for the role of Ian Malcolm in this film.
Which at the time it might have worked out well because, like I said, it's before he was like huge as a breakout. Like it's before the year that he did Dumb and Dumber and The Mask and Ace Ventura and sort of became that icon. So it would have been interesting to see him. I doubt he would have played Ian Malcolm like he was Ace Ventura. You know, like he would have had a bit more of a controlled and restrained kind of thing, and it could have set him on a completely different career path. Could you imagine him like potentially nailing the role of Ian Malcolm, and then he comes back for The Lost World, and it's like he would have like not become the Jim Carrey that we know and love today. So it would have been wild. It could have been great, but it's hard to imagine anyone else in these roles because Jeff Goldblum just absolutely crushes it as Ian Malcolm. You know, Ian Malcolm's the kind of character that like he feels like the kind of guy, like he's a great character, but it feels like it would be hard to be his friend. He seems like the kind of guy that he would hate your favorite movie. You know, like, you know, Ian Malcolm seems like the kind of guy, if you're like, oh, I love, you know, Lord of the Rings, he'd be like, well, you know,
that sucks.
Yeah, he would just like be that guy that would tear into everything or call every movie you loved like unrealistic and be like, this doesn't make any sense. The science doesn't add up. What do you mean? Giant monsters, superheroes? Like, he would just crap on whatever like fun, awesome movie you loved and just like make fun of it or condescend to it, you know? And so Ian Malcolm's a great character and Jeff Goldblum's awesome as him.
You were so preoccupied with thinking about how much you liked this movie, you never stopped to really think about how good it was.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, I got two more for you here, and Steven Spielberg considered Richard Dreyfuss, who starred in his 1975 film Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind from 1977, for the role of Dr. Alan Grant.
I will say Sam Neill's perfect casting for that. You know, hard to imagine. Richard Dreyfuss would have done, you know, a perfectly good job, but again, it feels like that would just change the whole tone of the movie, you know? Like you just have to have the right, not just like the right performances, but the right kind of faces, the right kind of feel. And Alan Grant in this movie has always felt, I know you're not an Indiana Jones guy, but being like a paleontologist, Alan Grant in this movie always felt like a sort of like if Indiana Jones was a normal guy, like if Indiana Jones wasn't like an adventurer, fist fighter, swashbuckler, and wasn't, you know, didn't have the looks of Harrison Ford, it feels like he'd be someone like Dr. Alan Grant, you know, like he's kind of like, you know, he's kind of like charming and you know, and handsome, and he's got a young lady who's interested in stuff like that, but he's like very smart and capable, but, you know, not like borderline, you know, action star superhero like Indiana Jones. Like it always felt like, you know, there could have been a version of reality where, you know, I would have liked to see Harrison Ford give a performance as Alan Grant. That would have been interesting.
Well, my last one for you here, this would have changed the film completely. This one would have brought in probably a whole different type of audience, and who knows what would have happened with Jurassic Park had this have happened. And I think I like the casting that we got better of Alan Grant than this one, but Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for the role of Dr. Grant.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. That's the first time I've heard that one. Dude, that would have been, I don't think it necessarily would have kept this movie from still potentially being the biggest hit ever. But wow, like just as I was mentioning, like Alan Grant is no Harrison Ford, you know, Sam Neill is no Harrison Ford. Like you say, like, oh, Arnold, like mega action star, buff guy, huge action star, Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, almost being Alan Grant is an insane idea to think about. You know, could you imagine him delivering his accent? You know, like, you know, that's when the attack comes, not from the front, but from the side. You know, I can't do a good Arnold voice, but like, just like, you know, like it's crazy to imagine that. Like, it would have been a certain kind of awesome, but I don't know if it would have been a better kind of awesome. Just very different.
Come on, do it.
Yeah,
Get the door locked.
Yeah, Ian freeze. Like, jeez, tell him to send in the damn helicopters. Like, jeez.
I've decided not to endorse the
Yeah.
park.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You play this.
Well, I mean, 2 years removed from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I mean, you wonder if this could have just been. Could he have made it even bigger, or would
it would have been? It would have been huge. It would have been a whole different kind of hype, and it would have been like it. Again, it's hard to be like, oh, the biggest movie of all time would have been even bigger, but it's also at the same time hard to imagine that it would have dampened the success of it at all. None of the amazing things about this movie would be less amazing if it was Arnold. Like, sure, he gives a different performance than Sam Neill, and it turns it into a different kind of a movie because then it becomes an Arnold movie. But I don't think it would have. It's hard to imagine it really hurting it, in the hands of Spielberg. It's hard to imagine that really hurting it or holding it back, considering all of the other amazing things. John Williams' score would have been there, the CGI would have been there, the animatronics, all of the other, it all would have been there still. And I mean, Arnold's a photogenic guy, and he's a charismatic lead, and so it would have been, again, hard to say that the biggest hit of all time would have been even bigger, but potentially in some commercial aspects, it might have been.
I've just been sitting here thinking of quotes from the film that I could do in an Arnold voice.
Yeah, I know, right? They're moving in herds.
That is all I have for you on the fun facts. I thought I would save that one for last, as I thought it'd be a good conversation piece.
That is wild. I want that. Yeah, that's wild. Where's the like the meme AI deep fakes of Arnold in Jurassic Park?
give us even Sam Neill with the Arnold voice. Give us that on YouTube.
Yes, yeah, they're very different builds. That's for sure.
With that being all I have for you for fun facts, let's move on to our last category and start with, who is your favorite character in the original Jurassic Park?
One note before I go on here. Who kind of would have been really cool to imagine Arnold as would have been Muldoon. That would have been an interesting, like, Arnold could have been that kind of tough guy, cool character in the movie, and then it would have been a shocker if he got killed off. But we'll move on quickly from that. I don't want to spend 20 minutes talking about that.
I do like that. I do like that.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Clever girl, him having that moment, it would have been really cool. But anyways, my favorite character, I gotta go, since we were just talking about it for 10 minutes, I gotta go Dr. Alan Grant. He's, ostensibly the lead character, the main character, but not, it's a bit of an ensemble, but Alan Grant, just his personality type, kind of like even keeled, measured, heroic, but not sort of like action guy. It's a good dynamic. Ian Malcolm is a great character and a fun character, but I feel like I'd get along better with Dr. Alan Grant.
We're going based off who could be a better friend here, I guess.
Yeah. Alan Grant would enjoy your favorite movie with you, and Ian Malcolm would talk crap on your favorite movie.
Alan Grant just doesn't want to be around your baby because they smell.
Yeah. No kids.
Well, I went with one of the opposites. I went with Ian Malcolm, and anyone who knows me and has seen this movie would probably guess why. He's the fast talker. He's a sarcastic guy. He's always got something to say. He's the flirt. He's always after the lady, and he's got kids. He's like, oh hell yeah, I love kids. I'm always looking for the future ex Mrs. Malcolm, and he's just a fun guy all around in this film.
I hate to kind of say it, but my personality is probably closer to Ian Malcolm's too. If we were going to try and pick a character that I'm more similar to, like, I will. If you tell me your favorite movie is a horrible movie, I will talk crap on your favorite movie. But so maybe that's why. Maybe I'm learning something here about myself, that I'm a bit more like the character that I'm like, who would be friends with that guy?
Yeah, anyone who's listened to the Godzilla our episodes, Chris definitely knocks the movies that I like.
Yeah. So there you go. Maybe I'm the thing that I hate. Who knows?
Don't ever tell him you have a soft spot for Jaws 3 or Jaws the Revenge.
Those movies are terrible.
But I like Ian Malcolm in this film, and Jeff Goldblum. I like him in this one. I like him in his appearances in the sequels. I loved him in the Fly remake. So I mean, I like seeing him as a character actor, and I don't think I've ever disliked anything that I've seen him in. So it was an easy choice to pick him in this one.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that choice either. Nothing wrong with that.
So I'll have you go for score, what your favorite score was for this one, and then I'll hit you first with my favorite quote and scene for the film.
Sure, there's a lot of long tracks, but I believe this is somewhere in the because there's a lot of suites and things like that. So I don't know specifically the track, and but it's the score for the Brachiosaurus scene that is the one of the most I don't like to use words like magical, but that's one of the most cinematically powerful reveals of anything timed with music. You see them all looking in the distance, and then they're turning to it, they're reacting to it, and then you just see in broad daylight, full body reveal of a Brachiosaurus with that music playing, and in it, that music crescendos throughout the scene, and it's just these great things like this is a warm-blooded creature. Well, now I'm talking about the whole scene, but anyway, the music goes with that scene perfectly, and it gives you goosebumps every time. And so the music for that scene is where I'll go.
I went with one. I just listened to the soundtrack on Spotify, and the one I chose was titled "Welcome to Jurassic Park." So it's when they're on the helicopter, and you see Richard Attenborough's character. He goes, "There it is," and you pan over and you see the island, and the music kicks in, and it's all the way from there. I believe it's like a 7-minute track, and it's them descending in the helicopter and getting into the jeeps, and as you stated, seeing the Brachiosaurus scene where
Okay, yeah, that's the thing. It's one suite, so it kind of includes the whole thing. Yes, that's the track.
yeah, but the main portion of that one is the main Jurassic Park, like the theme of the film where they see the Brachiosaurus, like that is the best part of that suite for that soundtrack.
It's phenomenal. It's movie magic. It's movie magic.
It is. It like we said before, John Williams, his music, it encompasses the scenes very well. It's like a very emotional and like riveting soundtrack. Like he puts a lot of work into it, and it sounds very good once you see the scene. And if you pay attention to the music, they encompass each other very well.
He has a great knack for taking what could be in other movies sort of dead footage, kind of dead air, just kind of in between kind of moments, or just a rather mundane sequence, and the music he undercuts it with will just it gives it an energy and this definition. Like even after the Brachiosaurus scene where Hammond goes, "I'll show you," and then they're approaching the visitor center, and you're just hearing the dun, 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 dun. It's like it's giving this great energy to this moment of just jeeps pulling up to a vehicle, but it's like it's part of the propulsion of the movie. Like they just hit you with the like, I'll show you how we made dinosaurs, and now you're moving toward this like intrigue of them explaining how this is all possible. But it's just kind of B-roll of trucks pulling up to a building, but he gives it this like propulsion and this energy, and he's got a talent for that.
Yeah, it's as I was watching it, I noticed there isn't a lot of like lull moments of music where there isn't any music at all. Like there a lot through this movie, there's something in the background playing of some sort of music for a good portion of even when it's just characters on film. It seems like there's something in the background a lot of the time. Like so, I mean, there's not a lot of time where it's just characters talking, and I like that.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments is when the Jeep is slowly descending down the tree, and the John Williams doesn't start the music immediately for like the tension of it. He saves it for this kind of final stretch of it after the tree, starts to fall, but then get caught by the big branch, and then John Williams brings the music in right on that moment just to have it, just to give that final stretch of the tension. He doesn't try to underscore the whole thing with like this sort of panic tone or ticking clock. Like he saves it till it's the biggest like oh crap moment.
Yes, I mean, there's not a lot we can say except the music is phenomenal. What people know that John Williams like did like Star Wars, Jaws, Jurassic Park. Like those are probably 10 of the those are probably in the top 10 or 15 most recognizable movie themes of all time. So I mean, he's done his due diligence. Like he's phenomenal when it comes to composing scores for films.
I believe there's a YouTube video called "John Williams is the Man" or something like that, and it's someone going, and it's like an acapella of multiple John Williams themes, but they put lyrics to it, and it's one of the coolest tributes to the many different great themes and works of John Williams that you'll ever see by a band I think called Moose Butter. So check that out.
I will have to take a peek at that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Well, you went first for them too. As I promised, I'll go for my favorite quote and favorite scene of the film. So I know my favorite quote as a kid, and I mean it. So there were a couple. I'm sure we'll talk about a couple as we always do, but I'll give you a couple honorable mentions. I'll
Oh yeah,
fire off.
almost every line of dialogue in this movie could be an honorable
Yeah,
mention.
I'll fire one at you, and then I'll let you fire one back at me if you have. I'm sure you have a couple before you get to your favorite one of the film.
Sure.
My first one was when Dr. John Hammond and Dr. Ellie Sattler were sitting down and having a conversation, and John just goes, "When we have control again," and Dr. Sattler goes, "You never had control. That's the illusion. I was overwhelmed by the power of this place, but I made a mistake too. I didn't have enough respect for that power, and it's out now. The only thing that matters now are the people we love, Alan and Lex and Tim. John, they're out there where people are dying." And I liked that one because like Hammond is still like in this fantasy world of like I got to get this park up and running, and when it happens, and like she has to like snap him back to reality, like, hey, like this is happening, like your park's going to shit, people are dying, like you need to wake up.
Yeah, he can't avoid being in sort of showmanship mode. And we're not going to do a lot of talking about the book here, which the book is phenomenal and wonderful in its own unique way. But Hammond's got a much different characterization in the book where he's much more of a villainous character, but Spielberg liked the idea of the sort of the showman who wants to put on a great presentation and a bit more sincere and earnest, and he's just kind of locked into that to a fault almost. So that's a great bit of dialogue. Uh I guess I kind of have like, I guess three that I kind of want to mention. Like if I have to say like the line that I think is the most sort of iconic and grandiose for the movie as a whole, it's John Hammond saying, "Welcome to Jurassic Park." That's the best there. The sort of line that's kind of got the most kind of like, that's the most sort of awe inspiring, I would say, when Alan Grant's first seeing the dinosaurs and he just has this realization moment where he goes, they're moving in herds. They do move in herds. That sort of wonder of he studied these things for years and years and years and speculated on them. And now, for better or worse, he's getting to see actual dinosaurs and they actually get to confirm things about them and see it. Like what we thought about them is real. Like they do move in herds. Like it's just like this great kind of like he's having this like childlike moment and of wonder and confirmation of what he thought. It's very wonderful. And then like as far as an intellectual line of dialogue or a more interesting line, it's Ian Malcolm saying, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop to think if they should. And that in another way, like the Welcome to Jurassic Park line is like this encompassing theme for the movie that it's like, yeah, we did this amazing thing and then look how awful it goes, and that can be said about so many advances in technology, that there's amazing and wonderful and good things that come from it, but those things can also be absolutely terrible and end lives and destroy things. So, those have to be the lines that I kind of love the most as far as just overall best lines of dialogue.
And that was one of the ones I liked as well, that always stuck out. Even when I was younger, the scientists were preoccupied. I like that. I like that one a lot as well. I had another one from that same scene, and then I'll get into my what one was my favorite as a kid. So I kind of just threw it in here. And this one was from Dr. Malcolm as well. And it says, John, the kind of control you're attempting simply is, it's not possible. If there's one thing the history of evolution has taught us, it's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free. It expands to new territories and crashes through barriers, painfully, maybe even dangerously. But, well, there it is. And Dr. Henry Wu replies, you're implying that a group composed entirely of female animals will breed? And Ian Malcolm goes, no, I'm simply saying that life finds a way. And that one's just like, ooh, like life always does find a way. So it's like, that's a hard hitting quote. Like no matter what, like things get figured out. And later on in the film, clearly, again, life finds a way. So like that's just a clever nod to things that will come later. So I like that.
Yeah, I have to give you a round of applause for that because that's an exceptional piece of dialogue, and that's right up there. Life finds a way that's wonderful. I love that line, that whole dialogue exchange. This movie is known for the amazing, awe-inspiring action scenes and visual effect sequences and things like that, but it has a couple of really great dialogue scenes. The round table scene, where they're just hashing out all of the details and different perspectives on the movie or on what's going on in the movie. You've got Hammond, and then Malcolm has his concerns. The lawyer is obviously money minded, and then Sattler and Grant are not as poo-pooing of the idea as Malcolm is, but they're still expressing like grave reservations, and that whole scene, it's like the meat on the bones scene. It's like this movie is not just effects and action and things like that. You could have probably editorially found a way to gloss over that scene or make it much shorter, but in some ways that scene's almost this centerpiece roundtable discussion of what the entire movie's all about, and it's exceptional. And so it's not going to be listed really as anyone's favorite scenes, but I think it's one of the best scenes in the movie.
And I mean, you could go back to when they first get to Jurassic Park, and there's 5 or 6 lines of dialogue just in that scene with the Brachiosaurus. You got Ian Malcolm saying, "The son of a bitch did it. The crazy son of a bitch actually did it." Or and then Dr. Grant's like, "How fast are they?" "Well, we clocked the T-Rex at 32 miles an hour," and then they're just in awe, like,
Yeah.
T-Rex, like you say again, we have a T-Rex.
A lot of the way that Attenborough delivers some of his lines are quotable because we have a T-Rex, that's great. And then there's another one that once upon a time I worked at a movie theater, and movie theaters have stock rooms with candy in them, and we sold Butterfingers at our movie theater. And when I was a regular employee and then a supervisor, and even as a manager, you have to go into those rooms often, and you're doing stock or grabbing things to go put out on the shelves. And so me and one of my friends at that theater, we quoted Jurassic Park all the time as like our sense of humor. When we would see huge crowds of people, one of us would always say they're moving in herds. And then if we were ever going in the stock room to grab Butterfingers, one of us would always say, you have butterfingers, the way that Attenborough says it in the movie, like there's just a lot of like stuff like this that it's like, we would just bring that kind of stuff up. And so it's like there's so many memorable, hold on to your butts. There's so many memorable lines of dialogue that are just the way they're delivered and the way they're presented in the movie are just, iconic in their own ways.
Absolutely. I'll give you my favorite one as a kid, and again, it's from Ian Malcolm, and he just walks up, he takes his sunglasses off, and he goes, "That is one big pile of shit."
Yeah, you can't, that's as blunt as it needs to go, and Nedry gets some fun stuff too, like, no wonder you went extinct. I'm going to run you over when I come back down, like just stuff like that. It's like, yeah, it's like everyone's got a little bit of that, like, cynical a-hole in them, and it's fun to kind of indulge with that, with the Nedry character.
I mentioned that last night. I started laughing at that scene, and my friend Carly, she's like, "What?" And she was doing work on her laptop for her job, and I was like, "Did you not hear that?" And she was like, "No." I was like, "He grabs a stick and he looks at the dinosaur and he's like, 'Here, stick, stupid, stick.'" So that made me laugh last night. I almost forgot about that part in the film, but there is a lot in this film that's definitely quotable and that I've quoted over the years, and that just certain lines of dialogue you don't forget.
Yeah, it's great.
So I'll go next on this one as well. My favorite scene in Jurassic Park. I mean, as a kid, as an adult, a teenager, in 20 years from now, I mean, it's always going to be the T-Rex appearance, or the T-Rex breaking out of its paddock. And I mean, it's so like groundbreaking for the special effects, like seeing the animatronic face to face and with Dr. Alan Grant and Lex, and like just how they did that entire scene. It probably about a 10-minute scene or so of just nonstop T-Rex action, attacking the car and going after the kids. And even when they like shine the flashlight in his eye, you see his pupil dilate, and just little like things like that add to the scene, and that's the reason. I mean, my favorite dinosaur is a T-Rex is probably this film and that scene. And it's just everything about the T-Rex. Anytime one of these movies comes out, I always say to myself, we better have some T-Rex action in it. Or some people get tired of it. I never get sick of seeing the T-Rex in these films. So I mean, that scene right there, and the attack on the raptors at the end, anything with the T-Rex in this film is like gold to me.
Yeah, the T-Rex is used as the logo for the franchise for a reason. I 100% agree with you. It is the T-Rex paddock sequence that is the absolute cinema, moment of the movie. Plenty of great scenes. The Brachiosaurus reveal is sort of movie magic. The great dialogue scene around the table is sort of the intellectual mind of the movie. The raptor attack scene is great. There's great scenes throughout the entire film, but the T-Rex attacking the Jeeps is hands down the peak moment of the movie. And it's just like, it's a masterclass and it's horror filmmaking. It's, when you watch that scene when you're younger, it's absolutely terrifying. And it's like, you don't have to be very bloody and violent and gory to be horror and to be intense and to be scary. But it's like the tension is so great, just the way that it ramps up the stakes and the way it changes and shifts, and distracting with the flares, and then attacking the kids' Jeep, getting distracted, having to go over the edge of the ravine. It's just exceptional beginning to end. You can't beat it.
Well, and I don't think off the top of my head that we see the T-Rex in the trailer. I can't 100% remember. I think we hear it, but so like as a kid, like, or even as an adult, like,
oh gosh, I wouldn't even know. I don't know if I've ever even like seen the original trailers for this film. I wouldn't even know.
I watched it the other night doing the research for this, and I honestly, that might have been the first time I've ever seen it, and I can't remember if the T-Rex actually shows on screen. But like as a kid, like I said, or even as an adult, like first time seeing this, like you see the Brachiosaurus for the first time, and like in in history, like the T-Rex is the most like famous dinosaur, for like kids and adults, and like Sue the T-Rex and things like that. And so like there has to be a T-Rex in here. Like you said, it's the logo on like all the Blu-ray cases for this, or for the franchise. So like they're by the T-Rex paddock, and you see that little glass of water start to vibrate. And as a kid, or the first time seeing this, it's like, all right, here we go. Like we're getting to it now. And then you see the T-Rex pop up after they ask, "Where's the goat?" And you see him eating the goat, or see her, sorry,
Yeah.
eating the goat. See
The
Rexy eating the goat.
the the goat was sitting in the director's chair. The greatest of all time was Spielberg sitting in the director's chair.
And you're just amazed at what the T-Rex looks like. So it's that, I mean, everything about this scene, you're waiting to see the T-Rex, and at an hour into the film, you finally see it in all its glory, and it's incredible. So there was nothing else I could say, or like there's not another scene I could have picked for this first Jurassic Park.
Yeah, you can't. I know there would maybe be some, and it maybe says what kind of movie viewer you are. Some might pick the raptor scene in the kitchen. So it's kind of like those are kind of the two big moments that I think most people would pick as their favorite scene. Either the Brachiosaurus reveal, the T Rex attack, or the raptor kitchen scene. And so, but I got to go with that T Rex attack, man. That's where it's at.
Well, and then how clever was it of Spielberg to have, the little fight scene at the end between the raptors, and as the T-Rex roars, you get the banner that's "When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth" falling down.
Yeah,
Like, how clever was
that's
that?
that's just Spielberg having great instincts, and he even said that originally the T Rex was not part of that climax, and he said as he was making the movie, he says he was able to recognize like the T Rex is the star of this picture, and if the T Rex does not make some form of triumphant or heroic heroic return at the end of the movie, the audience will hate me if they don't get to see the T-Rex again. Would the T-Rex eating the Gallimimus have potentially been the last time you see the T-Rex in the movie? And that's just wouldn't have hit the same, And so the T-Rex showing up at the end and intentionally or not, clearly like accidentally saving them from the raptors, like that's just great, because like the T-Rex is horrifying, but you would love to be in a situation where you can root for the T-Rex, or be happy that it showed up, and being able to stage a climax that allows for that. That's just Spielberg having great instincts for what the audiences want. It's just as smart as James Cameron saying, okay, we're going to take the Terminator from Terminator 1, but in the sequel, Arnold gets to be the hero as the Terminator. And then, T2 becomes one of the biggest movies ever. You just have to know how to kind of give that audience what they want when they need it, and just make it in a way that works. And Spielberg knows what's up.
Absolutely, and the sound design of all the dinosaurs, especially the T-Rex. I mean that. I think I used to have the T-Rex's roar as like my text message ringtone when I first got a phone or something. I was a little nerd.
That's fun. That's fun. Yeah, I never got wild with the text or ringtones or anything like that. I never went like I always loved it when other people did, but I never went like wild or weird with those and had any like cool featured ones or anything like that.
I always try to. I mean, again, that's probably one of the most recognizable sound effects from a film, and to up until today, is the T-Rex roar from these films.
Yeah, and you'll still hear in a lot of like monster movie roars, you'll still hear elements of the T-Rex roar, if not outright, reusages of it incorporated into the soundscapes of other movie creatures.
Well, one of my little girl's favorite movies is A Bug's Life, and they use it in that film. So,
yeah, there you go.
And I mean, especially a lot of sci-fi films do it too. Like the cheap little sci-fi budget films use like knockoff versions of it, or like you said, little portions of it.
Yeah, there's a creature in the Avatar movies, the Thanator, that has a little bit of a T-Rex kind of sound to it. It's not like a total one for one, but you can tell there's a little bit of like a vibe to it in at least one scene.
Yeah, that's because it's iconic. It's like this film. Everything about this is iconic. The sound effects are iconic. The music, the directing, the dinosaurs, the characters. It's just an iconic film.
100%.
That is all I have for you for our favorites categories. So if there is nothing else on Jurassic Park, I will get into some final thoughts and to get into what we are doing on our next episode.
Oh yeah, I got to ramble on a few things.
Absolutely.
I got to talk a little bit. Rewatching the movie, I was kind of like locked in from the beginning, and so I kind of wanted to talk about like how well it is off like right off the get go. I love that the Universal Studios logo doesn't have the normal logo; it has just sort of ambient nature noise, which kind of like it kind of puts you in the aesthetic of a sort of a prehistoric kind of time. Like there's no like technology and things like that. You're just hearing the chirps and sounds of the wild. I love that as kind of like what accompanies the Universal Studios logo. I love that the aspect ratio of the movie is 1.85 to 1, meaning that on your TV, which is a 16:9 display, you will not have the bars on the top of the film or the sides of the film. It fills your whole display. I think everything should be filmed that way. I don't think anything should ever have bars on your home display. I think it should always fill your screen. So I love that, and the reason Spielberg usually doesn't shoot that way, but the reason he did for Jurassic Park was because the dinosaurs are much taller than humans, and so for scale and framing of shots and scenes, he chose that aspect ratio because it makes for better shot composition. And there is a later entry in this franchise that does not use that aspect ratio, and I think whether you actively notice it or not, I think it hinders the movie. So I love the aspect ratio of the movie. I love that, and I'm not going to go through every scene doing this, but when you first see Muldoon in the movie holding a shotgun in the teaser or in the stinger at the beginning, you're kind of hearing a little bit on the soundtrack like this dun 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 dun, and it feels kind of like it feels a little 80s. And there was a filmmaker, I think it was Matthew Vaughn, who directed the Kingsman movies. He made a remark about how each decade, like the first few years of any decade, sort of has overlap with the last few years of the previous decade. Like early 90s movies kind of have a little bit of a late 80s vibe to them. And with that scene, just that stinger opening scene, it feels like the kind of scene that could have been in like, it feels a little late 80s in the way that even that sort of score is going in. It feels like something you might hear like in like The Thing or something. And it just has this like cool kind of vibe before the movie kind of moves forward into this kind of definitively kind of 90s aesthetic. So I just wanted to talk about the couple of opening scenes of the movie in the beginning right off the bat, just because like from start to finish, this thing is kind of just excellent. Every scene transition in the like first act of the movie is kind of based on like a reveal or a mystery or like what's going on here. You're dissolving into like a reflection in the water. You're cutting to bones being dug out of the dirt. It's just like it just keeps you intrigued and engaged like every step of the way. And that's been said a million times about this movie, but it's a masterpiece. I could go on and on for every single scene in the movie, but I won't. But it's just exceptionally put together at every stage. It's not just the special effects. It's not just the people love dinosaurs. It's perfect top to bottom.
100%. That is why it's the definitive dinosaur film. And I don't even think we need to go into final thoughts because everyone knows.
Yeah, my final thoughts. I actually don't like this movie that much. It's a little mid. Yeah, but please, come on. What are we going to say that's not there? It's not already been said.
Absolutely. So, I mean, with getting to do this first Jurassic Park, clearly we're not going to stop here. So, on our next episode, we will be doing the Lost World Jurassic Park. So Chris, what did you seen that one? I'm sure as a young little guy too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, seen it plenty of times. So looking forward to that. It will be a fun discussion, and I look forward to, as we go through these 6, soon to be 7 of these films, that as we've now got a franchise again, that as we go through, we can progressively rank them each time out and see where the rankings stack up.
Ooh, you wanna rank them as we go, or at the end of our final episode?
No, I'd say rank them as you go, like we have been doing like we did with some of the other series.
I can do that because I mean I think you might be surprised. I mean the second one when I was younger, the Lost World, that was my favorite one as a kid. It was the one I watched the most. And I didn't start really coming back to this original until probably 14, maybe 15, and watching it again and really appreciating it. Because I mean, I watched the first and second one as a little guy, and then when Jurassic Park 3 came out, I went and seen that one in theaters. So it was those three, but the one I went back to was the Lost World Jurassic Park, with all the T-Rex glory and that one that we get. That was the one I went back to. So I mean, I didn't really appreciate this one for how great it was until I got a little bit older.
I got you. See, as a kid, there were more than a few sequels that I always preferred to the originals. I always liked Empire more than A New Hope for Star Wars. I always liked T2 more than T1. I always like Ace Ventura 2 more than 1. Even Austin Powers, I always liked the second one more than the first one. But Jurassic Park, I always liked both of them, but I always liked the original more than the second one. That was always my favorite one. So, there's no version of reality where the Lost World for me is better than the first one. But, it will still be fun to discuss as we go through, because there are a few of the entries in the series where it might be very hard to place them better or worse than each other. And there's a lot of arguments to be made. So for this rewatch of the franchise, I will just have to lock in and finally make a choice.
Trust me, doing my research, I ranked these before I watched them again, and watching them, and then I kind of re-ranked them. So now as we go through the episodes and I rewatch them kind of like the night before we record, some things might change again. I don't know. So
Yeah. It's exciting, and it's a big deal. When you've got 20 movies, there's not, or something, or a dozen movies, there's not a huge difference between like, oh, well, what's number 7 on the list versus number 8 on the list. But when you've got 6, it's like, ooh, that whole like what's third best and what's fourth best, that third and fourth best, like that's a difference. It's a big deal, of how you put what you put in the top 3 and the bottom 3, so it'll be exciting to talk about.
Yeah, and we can't even say any of these are bad. So it's like, do we just have our bottom 2, our middle 2, and our top 2 kind of like our, I don't know.
Can we say some of them are bad? Who knows? Maybe we'll have that discussion. Maybe there's one. Who knows? Maybe there's 2. No. Well, we will see. We will keep people in suspense about that.
Absolutely. So before we get out of here, I'll say thank you as always for joining me, because this was fun. I've been waiting to do these ones. I was glad that we decided to do these ones this year.
Yeah, almost long enough to be an audio commentary on the movie.
Well, we still got some editing to do. I can push some stuff around, and we'll get her to 2 hours. No.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
But no, thank you for joining me. Thanks again. And, thanks to anyone who's out there listening. Again, we have The Lost World, Jurassic Park on our next episode. But until next time.
John, the kind of control you're attempting is, it's not possible. Listen, if there's one thing the history of evolution has taught us, it's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free, it expands to new territories, and it crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously. But, well, there it is. There it is.
You're implying that a group composed entirely of female animals will breed?
No, I'm simply saying that life finds a way.